Okay guys, today we're doing our second day of review for Georgia Milestones. The problems that you had for homework were on page 10 of your packet, and it's number 20 through 25. So we're just going to do these quickly. So number 20 asks which of the following numbers is irrational. So we're going to use process of elimination and look through the answer choices. So we want it to be irrational. So let's start with A, 45.8. So any decimal that terminates or ends and doesn't have this is going to be rational. Now if it had a dot 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 at the end, that would give us an irrational number, but this one doesn't. So that one is rational. Okay, the square root of 50. 50 is not a perfect square. So when you put this in your calculator, 50 square root, it's going to give you a long decimal. Whenever a number is a square root and it's not a perfect square inside, that's going to be irrational. Okay? If it's not a perfect square, then that's an irrational number. So B is actually the correct answer here. Let's look at C and D. So C is the square root of 100, and the square root of 100 is a whole number 10, so the square root of 100 is rational. Last one, 0.16 repeating. Repeating decimals are always rational because they can be written as fractions, so that one is not irrational. The only one that's irrational is this non-perfect square. Okay, 21, which of the following numbers is rational? So now we're looking for a rational number. Start with A, pi. Pi is irrational. It's one of the irrational numbers. It's not A. The square root of 2, when you put that in your calculator, that's going to give you a decimal, so it's not a perfect square. So that's irrational. Okay? Here's an example of this decimal with the dot 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 that I was talking about. Whenever you see that, that's going to mean that the decimal is not terminating, so that's irrational. And then D is just 23, just a regular number, so that's rational. Okay? What is 0.5 repeating in fraction form? The best way to do this is to just divide these in the calculator, and then you can just see which one gives you repeating 5. So I'll do 1 divided by 2. And that's 0.5, but it's not repeating, so that's not our correct answer. Okay, 1 divided by 5. And that's 0.2, so it's definitely not that one. 5 divided by 9. Now this calculator rounded it to a 6, but that's just because the calculator didn't have enough room, so this is actually a repeating 5. 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. That's 0.5 repeating. Okay, so that's the correct answer. And then 5 divided by 10 is also 0.5. So it's not that one. Okay. Which point shows the approximate value of the square root of 40 on the number line? Alright, so there will probably be some of these questions just like this on the non-calculator part of the Georgia Milestones. So what you need to do is figure out the 2 perfect squares that are closest to this one, the square root of 40, and that would be, before it is the square root of 36. And the square root of 36 is 6. And after it would be the square root of 49, which is 7. So the square root of 40 is going to be somewhere in between the square root of 36 and the square root of 49, which means it would be somewhere between 6 and 7 on a number line. The closest point to that on this number line is point A, because it's less than 10. So that tells me that it would be somewhere near 6 or 7. So that is the best choice. Don't get stuck picking this one, C. This doesn't say the square root of 40, it just says 40. Now 40 is going to be a square root, a much larger square root, so you don't need to fall for that trap. That's a trap answer, because they think that you're just going to look for the 40. Okay? Alright. So make sure you you practice your perfect squares because that's going to help a lot on those type of questions when you don't have a calculator. If you had a calculator, you could just put the square root of 40 in your calculator and it would give you like 6.5 or something, so you would know that it went there. Which number line best represents the locations of 2 times pi, and the square root of 38? So, the square root of 38, let's do that one first. So, like the one that we did up here, the square root of 38 is just going to be a little bit after the square root of 36. So they're very close. So square root of 36 is 6, so this is going to come right after 6. So like it would probably be closer to this side, so like right after the 6. Definitely not 6.8. It's going to be very close to 6. So maybe B. But this one is even zoomed in more. Okay, so it's definitely not A. We can definitely rule that one out. Okay. So you would probably definitely need a calculator for this. So let's put these in the calculator. So 38 square root, that's 6.16. So it's going to come before 6.2. 6.1 would be here. 6.16. So it's not B, because it has to come after 6.1. Maybe this one? And then this one has it too far. So the square root of 38 is 6.16, so that would be somewhere closer to here, not all the way down here. So it's not D. Okay, so it looks like C is the correct answer. And then if you wanted to look at the 2 times pi, so let me find on this calculator. Pi times 2 is 6.28. So yeah, that's right before 6.3, so after 6.2. So C is the correct answer. Okay, Haley was attempting to classify the 2 groups of numbers shown below. Which titles would be most appropriate for the groups? So let's look at the answer choices. A says group 1 is rational numbers and group 2 is irrational numbers. So let's look and see if everything in here is rational. 1/2 is rational because it's a fraction. -10, integers are always rational. This is a terminating decimal, so that's rational. This is a perfect square, so that's rational. Repeating decimals are also rational. So yeah, everything in there is rational. Now let's see if these are irrational. I do see the ... so that means that's irrational. Pi is irrational. The square root of 2 is not a perfect square, so that's irrational. And the square root of 50 is also not a perfect square, so that's also irrational. So I think A is a good choice. Those are rational and irrational. B says real numbers. Now, these are real numbers, but actually all of these are real numbers, so that would not be the best choice. Same with C. These are real numbers, but so is group 2, so that wouldn't be a good description. Okay? And then D says number 1 is whole numbers. Those are not all whole numbers. Like, that's a fraction, and that's a decimal, so that's not a good choice either. A is the best choice in this case. Alright guys, see you tomorrow.